So this was your first ever bike race?
Yeah, it was.
You got this, Birdie.
How would you describe your experience?
Definitely less intimidating, but so much harder than I expected.
I made my girlfriend Roberta, aka Birdie, tackle my hometown race, Tour of Kincardine, with me. I took off first in the competitive wave, achieving my goal of being the first rider into the narrowing section. Meanwhile, Birdie took off 1 minute behind our wave. We were both doing the 28-kilometer long course, just in different waves. Birdie also had a good start, sitting in the middle of the pack just behind Pizza Boy. Being a local, I ride these trails all the time. The past week had me practicing the previous year's route, and little did I know there were some changes. As soon as I came over the bridge, I expected a quick right, but it was taped off and I ended up crashing just a few minutes into the race. Luckily, both me and my bike were okay, and I only lost a few seconds. I was able to reclaim second place pretty quickly, but one rider on a mountain bike was now up the trail and had a 10-second gap on me. Even though this is a mountain bike race, lots of people are riding gravel bikes and even cyclocross bikes because the middle section of the race is open and fast. Today I'll be riding my gravel bike with Windspace Lund Rapid gravel wheels and 44mm Tufo Thundero gravel tires. I think I have the ideal setup for a dry course, but with the unexpected rain this morning, the trails are going to be extremely slippery, muddy, and I'm going to be pushing my bike to the limit. After 5 minutes of chasing, I finally catch up to Matthew, who is the mountain biker ahead of me, but I only closed the last few seconds because he crashes on this bridge and it looks like his bike may have even slid into the ravine. I'm right on his tail, but as soon as we remount, he instantly starts pulling ahead. We're coming up to one of the most technical sections of the course, the double staircase, and since it's wet, the slightest mistake will cost you. I was able to make it down safely, but I was not in control the entire time. Coming through the Davison Center trails, Matthew was extending his lead on me to the point where I couldn't see him in the winding trails. Coming out the other side, I could see him again, and I knew if I limited my losses in the next forest, I could catch him on the road sector. Going through the cyclocross course, I could clearly see him only 30 seconds ahead of me, and I was able to look behind and see I had a gap of at least a minute to third place. Meanwhile, Birdie has been dialed. She's just entered the Davison Center forest behind a group of 3. She takes this climb really well and then makes the most courteous overtake I've ever seen in racing. Birdie quickly gets back up to speed and sets back in on her chase with lots of riders in sight. Over the top of the cyclocross section, we went through a farm field, and that's where my real struggle started as we entered the dreaded North Line. We start with a new section this year, which I had totally ripped 2 days ago when it was dry, but not today. It was so slippery I could barely keep my feet on the pedals. Thankfully, there was no one around to hear my rather coarse language here.
Oh, nice. Nice. Straight fucking.
Going into the heart of the North Line, I was pretty frustrated with the slip and slide trail I was supposed to ride, but I channeled this frustration into motivation and kept hammering. I was thankful I was able to switch to the Tufo Thundero tires before the race because the Pathfinders I was riding before had way less tread and would have made this even crazier. I had just gone through a really muddy section into this downhill staircase, and then this happened. With already 2 crashes on the day, my frustration was really starting to build, and we hadn't even got to the hardest part yet. I could see the 2 biggest hills ahead, so I picked up my bike and decided to run. The first steep hill actually went really well, and I don't think I've lost much time here, but we'll revisit this hill with Birdie because it didn't go so well for her. Over the top, I tried to ride my bike, but I instantly crashed for the 3rd time today. I swear I'm not trying to set the record for the most crashes in one bike race. So I kept running for a full 2 minutes, and finally atop the biggest climb of the forest, I was able to hop back on my bike. It wasn't fast, it wasn't pretty, and honestly, with the pressure to catch back up to Matthew, this section wasn't that much fun, but man, it sure was epic. Finally, I make it out of the forest, onto the North Line extension, and rip it after the solo leader. Just as I'm leaving the hell of the North Line, Birdie is entering it. The North Line starts off great for Bird. She passes another rider, she's riding through the mud, and she has 3 less crashes than me. But just like me, the mud is slowly starting to get to her.
Oh, this is brutal. Like kicked mud.
Being in the middle of the race means that all these muddy sections have been completely torn up, making it even harder for her to ride. Birdie makes a good decision and decides to walk the staircase I crashed on. But at the bottom of the stairs, Birdie hops back on her bike and actually rides a section that I ran. Chapeau, Birdie. Now Birdie's approaching the short steep hill I had to run up, and she has a group of 3 riders just ahead of her. Birdie tries to hike her bike up the hill, but she literally slides right back in place. She's wearing some old running shoes that have absolutely no grip. She hesitates for a second, contemplating how in the world she's even supposed to make it up this hill. She ends up laying her bike down, then crawling through the bushes up the steep slope so that she can then pull her bike up the hill. Yeah, this is bike racing.
So in the North Line, when you had to crawl and pull your bike up the hill, what was going through your head?
Just get me out of here. Just wanted to get out of the mud so badly.
Birdie's able to make it out of the North Line, but both her and her bike are covered in mud. It took her a total of 34 minutes to conquer this section, and during that time, I've been on the move. After the North Line, the race really speeds up. I had passed my parents cheering us on, and my dad told me I was 5 minutes behind the leader. I was shocked. 5 minutes is a huge gap. That means Matthew was going way faster in the trails. But with 13 kilometers of fast road and trail ahead, I wasn't going to give up and I was going to do my best to close the gap. I really enjoyed the middle section of the race. Going through town, you could put the power down without the fear of crashing. Halfway through the fast middle section of the race, I made a wrong turn. Here I instinctively turned right. There were no arrows, but this is a trail I train on, and I honestly thought it was part of the race. After the race, I had a volunteer come over and ask what I was doing on the beach, and that's when I realized I went off course. This section was pretty slow and sandy, but after some review, it only cost me about 45 seconds. I had not seen any riders for the last 20 minutes, so when I reached the Imberlin Lakes, we did a U-shape around them, and I could see that there was no one within a kilometer of me, meaning that I had at least a 2-minute gap on third place. Now I was heading out on the highway towards the farm. The course took us on some pretty rough grass, which Birdie and I had both planned to save some power for. Despite only averaging 15 kilometers an hour on this section, I did average 356 watts. There was a cool new section added this year where we end up riding through a private farm, and just as I was leaving the farm, real-time Birdie was officially leaving the hell of the North Line. I was so thankful I had the opportunity to practice this course because sections like this switchback area would have been so much slower and more dangerous. While Birdie ripped her way through town, I entered the final forest. The first half was actually pretty fast. I had to run some of the technical bits, but it wasn't nearly as muddy. Partway through the forest, my camera shut off, so I thought it was dead, so I wasn't recording when I took my biggest crash of the day. I was riding down the long staircase, and near the bottom I lost grip and toppled right over into the bushes. I was totally fine, just a few scratches, but my right hood was bent in, and I had put my glasses in my rear pocket and landed straight on them, snapping them in two. Turns out the crash charged my camera, and it somehow came back to life. The second half of the forest was so much slipperier, and I was a little shaken up by my 4th crash of the day, so I took it a lot safer. With the wet conditions, I think Matthew's choice of a mountain bike was the right call, with room for larger and knobbier tires that gave him a clear advantage. But even if I was on a mountain bike, I don't think I would have kept up with his superb bike handling skills. But with a gravel bike, I was still able to crush this course, surviving the final mud section and rolling in for 2nd place in a final time of 1 hour and 30 minutes and 53 seconds. As I crossed the line, Birdie was rolling through the farm in hot pursuit of 2 other riders. But the hunger took over and she ended up stopping for a quick snack break. When she took off, she ended up missing the trail and found herself biking in the middle of a farm field. At this point, the mud was taking a toll on her bike, causing the drivetrain to jam frequently, making it almost unrideable. She was making pretty good time, even with her mud-caked bike. As soon as I had finished, I had ridden back onto course to cheer her on.
What are you doing here? Are you done? What the fuck?
Once Bird passed by, I joined her for the last section of the race. I was so impressed how positive she was, even after all the mud and the ongoing bike issues. Birdie was ripping it through the forest, and I swear it was muddier than when I came through. When we got to the site of my 4th crash, Birdie did the right thing and walked down. I crashed in the bush just on the left side right here. I ended up stealing Bird's camera just in time to show you how muddy this trail really is.
You got this, Birdie.
Pretty much every little uphill, her bike would stall, so she had to keep hopping on and off her bike like the mud wasn't challenging enough. If it wasn't for her bike issues, she could have easily been 30 minutes faster. This race was a huge learning experience for her, and she massively improved her comfort on the bike. It really can't get much harder than slippery mud on a bike with drivetrain issues, and she still crushed it. Birdie ended up finishing with a final time of 2 hours and 42 minutes and 30 seconds.
That is your Sport Chief Women's Podium for the long course. Congratulations, ladies.
And to her surprise, she ended up finishing on the podium with third place in her category. I earned $200 for finishing second, so that'll cover the cost of a new pair of glasses. With one of the most challenging editions of Tour of Kincardine under our belts, we sent it home to freshen up from the mud. This year was definitely Type 2 fun, but the Tour of Kincardine is a really cool mountain bike race in a beautiful town. If you're interested in signing up for next year, I'll link their website down in the description below. Since you made it this far, here's some behind the scenes footage 40 minutes before the race.
Birdie, there's 40 minutes until the race starts.
Cold.
Thanks for watching, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace!